You're listening to the boring history for sleep, why you'd want to avoid a medieval laundry day, a slow, sleepy journey into the most exhausting wash cycle of the Middle Ages. Hey guys, tonight we're taking a sleepy stumble back to a time when doing your laundry wasn't just a chore, it was basically a slow-moving nightmare in a tunic. Picture it, England, France, the Low Countries, somewhere with rain, muck, and rivers that smell like someone gave up halfway through inventing plumbing. You're ankle-deep in sludge by dawn, dragging a woolen shift stiff with last week's stew stains and who knows what else, and it's your job to get it clean, or at least cleaner than it is. You're not just dealing with grime, you're dealing with mud that sucks the boots off your feet, soap that's more chemical warfare than cleanser, and judgmental geese who definitely know you're bad at this, and you've barely started. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time. It is always fun to see how far we reach. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before sunrise, your breath fogging in the freezing air, and your hands already aching in anticipation. There's a soft clatter as you lift the wooden lid off the family laundry chest, just a wicker basket full of damp wool, stiff linen, and one shirt that smells faintly of goat. You know which one? You're going to the riverbank, because in your charming 14th century hamlet, that's the only place anyone does washing. Well, anyone without a scullery maid or a nun doing it for them. Your legs itch under your woolen hose as you trudge down the slope outside the village. Beneath your feet, yesterday's rain has turned the narrow dirt track into a slip-and-slide of squelching filth. You try to avoid the worst puddles, but who are you kidding? By the time you reach the river, your ankles will be wearing nature's version of socks. The river looms into view. It's not so much picturesque as it is inhabited. A family of ducks stares at you like you owe them rent. You sigh. You've reached the laundress's station, a series of smooth rocks near the river's edge, surrounded by bundles of ash buckets, and one very suspicious chicken. This is your kingdom now. The water's cold, not refreshing cold, but bone-cracking, finger-numbing, regret every life decision cold. You dip your toes in and immediately lose all hope of having children. Still, you press on. The ritual begins. You kneel, placing your laundry bundle to one side, and reach for your washing stone. It's just a flat rock, but it's your closest friend now. You take out the first shift, one of your father's, embroidered with a slightly off-center family crest, and begin to scrub. The water smells faintly of iron, fish, and something else that doesn't bear thinking about. Probably the tanner upstream, whose idea of waste management is it flows away eventually. Your knees sink into the wet moss. It oozes under you like a living creature resigned to being part of the laundry process. You imagine the monks at the local abbey are probably already up and praying, while you're just here, exfoliating your shins with gravel. And here's the kicker. This isn't even seen as low-status work. No, laundry is important. It's ceremonial, symbolic even, a bit magical. A clean tunic was a sign of divine order. Cleanliness is next to godliness, they said, though historians still argue whether that proverb existed back then or was added later to make soap sound more theological. But while the symbolism is lovely, the experience is less so. You wring out a second tunic, your knuckles red and swelling. You notice a smear that's resisting all your scrubbing. Is it ale, porridge, blood? You don't ask questions anymore. You just keep washing. A child from the nearby cottage wanders over to watch. She offers no help, just commentary. "You're not hitting it hard enough," she says, eating what appears to be a raw turnip. You smile politely and fantasize about flinging a wet sock at her. It begins to drizzle, because of course it does. The weather waits all week for this precise moment. Raindrops mix with river spray until you're unsure what's soaking you, more the sky or the job. Your chemise clings to your arms like a wet bandage. Suddenly, a loud plop. A fish jumps nearby, then a louder plop-a-cow somewhere upstream, relieving itself directly into the water you're working in. And you thought the soap was going to be the most offensive part of today. It's worth mentioning that soap, as you know it, isn't a thing yet. You haven't even gotten to the creative alchemy that is medieval detergent, but that's for the next section. Right now, you're still hunched on your knees, cold, soaked, and covered in the kind of grime that has its own personality. But there's one oddly comforting fact to keep in mind. Everyone else's life is just as gross. No one smells good. No one's clothes are pristine. Even the Lord's tunic probably has a gravy stain from last Tuesday. So while this is hard, backbreaking, and wildly unpleasant, it's also just life, and you, somehow, are surviving it. You stand now, shakily, wiping your hands on a piece of damp wool that you tell yourself is a towel. It isn't. It's your uncle's undertunic, but your fingers are too numb to care. Now comes one of the worst parts of laundry doth a bucket. Run. You don't just use river water for washing. Oh no. You need a special brew for the pre-treatment stage that involves a concoction of lye, ashes, and water fetched from a cleaner well nearer to the village center. Yes, that means trekking all the way back with an empty wooden bucket and returning with it full. The bucket itself is a marvel of medieval engineering, meaning it leaks only slightly, and the handle hasn't given you splinters in over a week. Progress. You trudge uphill, passing a trio of gossiping women who eyed your muddy skirt and matted hair. Back to the river again, are we? One of them calls with a grin too wide to be friendly. You force a chuckle and move on, trying not to trip over a wandering goose. The main well stands near the market square, flanked by ox carts squabbling, merchants, and one man selling suspiciously shiny apples that definitely didn't come from any local orchard. The line for the well is short, but the mood is tense. Everyone's pretending not to notice the man in the corner sneezing into his sleeve. Another one that makes for in 2 days the air smells of sweat, turnips, and fear. You draw your water quickly, your hands stiff from the cold, and glance once more at the sick man. Is it just a cold, or is this the start of another bubo boiling? LYMPH, node screaming plague wave. Historians still argue whether common folk had any real understanding of disease transmission back then. But you're not taking chances. With your bucket now full, you begin the return walk. It sloshes ominously with every step, splashing down your leg and drawing flies. The wooden rim digs into your hip, but stopping would mean losing momentum and your patience. As you pass the butcher's shop, a pig escapes from a cart and barrels toward you like a hooved cannonball. You manage to leap aside just in time, twisting your ankle and soaking yourself in the process. The bucket survives, barely. The pig doesn't. It's quickly corralled by two yelling boys with sticks. One of them cheers when he sees your soggy state. You bathing in that thing now. You do not reply. You are serenity. You are a damp saint back at your washing spot. You set the bucket down with a thunk and take a breath that tastes of wet moss and mild despair. Your knees crack as you kneel again, preparing for the pre-treatment ritual. Ash lie, a medieval miracle or chemical terror, depending on the ratio. You begin mixing. A scoop of fine white wood ash collected from yesterday's hearth. A splash of well water. Stir until it becomes a slimy gray paste. This you drizzle over the worst of the stains, letting it soak in like some kind of sanctified salad dressing. It doesn't smell great. In fact, it smells like the wrong end of a chimney, but it works eventually. The trick is to let it sit. Just long enough to lift the grease, but not so long that it dissolves the fabric or your skin. A neighbor plops down beside you with her own bundle of wash. She pulls out her secret weapon, a small jug of stale human urine. Works wonders, she says proudly, uncorking the lid. You try not to gag as the ammonia hits the back of your throat like a slap. She offers you some. You decline, politely but firmly. Some people swear by it. Some people also eat eels raw and think singing to a loaf makes it rise faster. The truth is, laundry in the Middle Ages wasn't just dirty, it was dangerous. Lye burns, buckets break toes, people slipped, froze, or contracted skin infections from standing too long in cold river water. And that's not even touching the social dangers, because you're a woman. And in some towns, that makes you the assumed washer by default. Never mind if you're old, sick, or the village blacksmith, you're female and not rich. Congrats, you're a laundress. And if you're male, doing laundry is suspect. Suspiciously clean fingernails might get you mistaken for a monk, or worse, a fraud. Because back then, knowing how to clean a chemise might mean you're some kind of swindler trying to pass yourself off as higher status than you are. Cleanliness was a symbol, but also a potential trap, a double-edged sponge, if you will. Still, you continue scrubbing, treating, wringing. Your arms ache now, but you're not even halfway through your load. A tunic here, a blood-stained smock. They're likely from a kitchen mishap, hopefully not a jousting accident. Your own underthings are the last to get done. They're stained from a week's worth of walking, cooking, and sleeping in the same set of clothes. You sigh. No one told you medieval fashion included the scent of defeat. Suddenly, a strange bird swoops low overhead. You flinch, splattering lye mixture across your shoe. It lands in a tree and watches you with unsettling stillness. There's a superstition about birds watching women wash, something about omens, or judgment, or maybe just paltry envy. You choose to ignore it as the sun rises higher and the first bells from the chapel toll softly in the distance. You realize this entire ordeal has only covered about 1/3 of your laundry. Your back is wet, your eyes sting from smoke and ammonia, and there's a mosquito exploring your left earlobe. You glance at your bucket, still heavy, still half full. Somehow, you wipe your brow with your sleeve. It's a different kind of damp. Now part sweat, part river mist, part maybe war. And really, you don't want to know. But you're still here, you're still working. And hey, at least, the pig didn't knock you into the river. Small wins. The river has quieted a little now. The pig is gone. The sick man at the well has disappeared, hopefully home and not to the grave. And your neighbor with the jug of ammonia has moved a few paces downstream, where the smell of her secret formula can't threaten to dislodge your breakfast. You finally turn to the main event, the soap, except it's not really soap. Not in the way you might imagine, anyway. You reach into a cloth pouch tied at your waist and pull out a crumbling, chalky lump. Homemade, of course. You made it weeks ago in your hearth, boiling together wood ash and pig fat, while your cousin pretended not to gag nearby. The smell was unforgettable, as in, no one in your household has spoken to you quite the same way since. This lump is what's supposed to clean your family's underclothes, table linens, and the one nice tunic your aunt wears to Sunday Mass. You rub the soap between your hands. It foams a little and smells faintly of bacon and sadness. The soap disintegrates fast in cold water. So you work quickly, scrubbing it into seams, hems, armpits, and the lingering corners of whatever unknown misdeeds left orangish streaks on the back of your brother's hose. You ask no questions. You just add more soap. Historians still argue whether medieval households really used soap for routine washing or reserved it mostly for special occasions, festivals, feast days, weddings, that sort of thing. For you, it's a luxury born of desperation. The shift you're cleaning smells like it's plotting a rebellion. A breeze stirs. You take a deep breath and almost enjoy it till the wind shifts and brings you a reminder that someone nearby is also using old fermented urine as a cleanser. The sharp scent cuts across the crisp morning like a dagger made of old chamber pots. You glance to your left. A second washer, older, sharper-eyed, and clearly more experienced, is dabbing the stuff directly onto a collar with the precision of a surgeon. You make a mental note not to borrow clothes from her household. The day warms slightly. A few clouds part, letting sunlight shimmer across the river like a promise it can't possibly keep. You lean back, stretching your aching shoulders, and watch a dragonfly skim the water's surface. For a moment, everything is still except your fingers, which continue to scrub on autopilot. Numbed to the point of forgetting they're attached to you, you pick up a particularly stained woolen overtunic. It belonged to your grandfather, who once spilled an entire bowl of fish stew down the front and simply declared it decorative. It has not been decorative since you lather it thoroughly, focusing on the stains, like they owe you money. The water is no longer clear. Between the soap, the river muck, and the various substances being poured in by every laundress on the bank, the surface has taken on a frothy, grayish hue. If you stare too long, you start to suspect it might be alive. A sudden splash makes you jump. A goose has entered the river, honking furiously, possibly protesting the sheer amount of soap in its new bath. It glares at you like you just insulted its grandmother. You glare back. This is your turf now. You've set up a small rinsing pile beside you, clothes that are ready for their second dunking. To wash out the worst of the soap and lye, you begin dunking them one at a time, swishing them through the river water like overworked tea bags. This process should be simple. And yet, each piece brings its own mini-crisis. One sleeve gets caught on a submerged branch. A sock slips away in the current and has to be retrieved by stomping into the water up to your shin. You now have a new leak in your left shoe. You choose not to cry. One of your neighbors, a cheerful woman with 3 teeth and infinite opinions, begins telling you about a time she accidentally boiled her husband's trousers and shrunk them to the size of a squirrel. Didn't stop him wearing them, she chuckles. Just walked funny after. You smile, barely. You are deep in the rinse trance. Now, swish, ring, swish again. Your hands are so waterlogged, they squeak when you clench your fists. Your knuckles feel like someone's filled them with rocks. Your fingernails have turned a delicate, unbecoming shade of dishwater gray. A sudden, unexpected problem presents itself. Soap in your eye. You yelp quietly, not wanting to alarm the geese and stumble backward, rubbing furiously at the sting. This is not modern soap. There are no pH-balanced moisturizers here. This stuff was invented by people who thought bathing caused illness. It is corrosive enough to remove not only dirt, but your personality. You blink rapidly, one eye watering like a medieval fountain. Eventually, the pain subsides. You suspect your eyelashes may never forgive you. A boy walks past with a bundle of fresh laundry, fresh, in this case, meaning unwashed. He's clearly running an errand for someone wealthier than you, someone who can afford to outsource their misery. You envy them briefly, until you remember that most noblemen smell just as bad. Only they can afford to pretend it's intentional, and then you spot it. A slight tear in one of the chemises, not big, not obvious, but you know the tear wasn't there when you started, and now it is. Which means you'll have to mend it later, after laundry, after drying. After your spine uncoils and your hands remember how to hold a needle, you sigh loudly, and yet you keep going, not because it's fun or noble or even especially sanitary, but because someone has to do it. And that someone, for today, is you. Finish another shirt, fold it loosely over a flat rock to drain, and grab the next piece. Still so much to go. You're officially at the slap and twist phase of laundry now, where dignity goes to dye and elbow. Joints are sacrificed to the gods of friction. There's no room for grace here, only rhythm. A wet tunic in one hand, a wooden paddle in the other, and your knees firmly planted on what might be a rock or a toad. You don't check. You raise the bat fashioned from a splintering plank someone once used as a fence hand, bring it down with a hearty thwack. The sound echoes across the water like a distant drumbeat of defeat. You slap the fabric again and again and again. Your shoulders are on fire. Your wrists feel like they're made of old hinges. And somewhere in the distance, a priest is probably praying for your soul because you just muttered something extremely unbiblical under your breath. This is the step you mustn't skip, because scrubbing and rinsing alone won't lift out the deep down grime. You have to beat it out. Literally, it's the closest thing you have to therapy in this era. Though instead of a plush office and soft music, you get river silt in your shoes and a headache blooming behind your left eye. Twisting comes next. You take the garment now, fully saturated, and twice its original weight hand, wring it with all your strength. It's like wrestling a wet ferret. You twist and twist until your palms burn and the fabric lets out a groan of protest. Water drips down your arms, soaking your sleeves and making it impossible to tell what's wet from laundry and what's wet from your own sweat. A woman nearby has taken a more elegant approach. She wraps each item around a stick and twists it. That way, her arms rising and falling like a medieval pasta machine. You eye her method with a mix of admiration and resentment. She probably hasn't lost a fingernail to a tunic hem this week. A child wanders over with a message from your aunt. She says not to forget the tablecloth this time. He recites, before skipping away and stepping on your last bar of soap. It vanishes into the mud. You whisper a small funeral rite and move on. The tablecloth, of course, is not just a tablecloth. It is the tablecloth, the one used during saints' feasts, funerals, and that one time your cousin tried to impress a visiting scribe with wine and pear pudding. It's lace-edged, wool-backed, and large enough to require both arms and at least one prayer to manage. You unfurl it gently, revealing a tapestry of mystery stains, one suspicious burn mark, and what might be the ghost of a jam tart. You steal yourself and dip it into the river. It goes in limp and comes out heavier than your regrets. You drape it across your knees and begin the same process. Scrub, bat, twist, somewhere upstream. Another washer starts singing. It's a low rhythmic tune, one of those endless folk songs with 17 verses about a plowman, a goat, and some deeply unfortunate misunderstandings. You hum along just to stay sane. The river joins in with its own melody, the slosh of current, the thunk of paddles, and the occasional honk of geese who clearly have notes. And now your skin, the lie from earlier, even diluted, has started to do what it does best: burn. Tiny red patches appear along your wrists. You pause, flexing your fingers, and sigh. This happens every week. You know the pattern. A tingling itch, then heat, then the slow realization that your skin may peel before the tunic does. Historians still debate whether medieval washerwomen suffered chronic skin conditions from their work, or if they developed a kind of hard-earned resistance. You're voting for chronic, based on how your knuckles currently resemble pickled walnuts. But you soldier on, because even in the most thankless labor, there's a rhythm. And in that rhythm, sometimes, there's a kind of trance. A sleepy, back-bending, soul-numbing trance. Sure, but a trance nonetheless. Suddenly, a dog appears. Not yours. No one's, probably. It's just a muddy, enthusiastic creature who believes very strongly in the power of running through clean laundry piles. It makes a beeline for your drying linens, tail wagging like a metronome of doom. You shout. It pauses, confused, then bounds away, leaving a trail of paw prints and fur in its wake. You close your eyes, count to 5, reopen them. The stains are still there. Of course they are. You'll have to rewash at least 2 pieces, maybe 3. You briefly consider just burying them behind the woodshed and pretending they were lost to foxes instead. You bend, reach, and start again. By now, your spine is humming a low, bitter tune. Your knees have stopped sending pain signals, possibly out of mercy. You feel each piece of clothing like a new level of medieval laundry purgatory. Still, there's something oddly satisfying in seeing the garments laid out in rows, freshly beaten, twisted, and dripping. Even the cloth that you're fairly sure you've ruined beyond recognition looks somehow better than when you began. And the weirdest thing, you kind of get it. Why people do this. Not just because they have to, but because it's theirs. The work, the rhythm, the minor victories over impossible filth. You wield a bat and a bar of soap like weapons against chaos, and that chaos, slowly, reluctantly, retreats, at least until it's time to rinse again. By now, the laundry pile is down to its soggiest, most rebellious futha linens that have absorbed not just stains, but personality. You feel like a laundress exorcist trying to drive out the spirits of old gravy and unwashed sins. Your fingers are blistered, your sleeves so wet they slap when you move, and your kneecaps feel like they've fused to the riverbank forever. But you're not done. It's time to rinse, and rinsing, despite its gentle name, is where the chaos always reasserts itself. You gather the cleaned garments beaten, lathered, wrung, and now thoroughly insulted and wade back toward the river's edge. The water's moved since this morning. It flows faster now, stirred by winds, and maybe by the collective rage of a dozen laundresses upstream, flinging soap and curses with equal force. The first garment you dip is a petticoat. It resists. Like a soggy sail, it billows underwater, wrapping around your arms as if to say, "Let us both drown together." You fight it. You win. Barely. Then comes the moment of tranquility you always forget about, the river's lullaby. For one miraculous minute, the light shifts. Sunlight bounces across the current like polished coins, and the sound of water slapping against stone becomes ... pleasant. You breathe. You're half crouched in cold water with a tunic over your head, and still, somehow, you feel the flicker of peace until the wind kicks up without warning. It grabs your drying line like a medieval prankster and flings half your freshly rinsed garments into the air like laundry confetti. A chemise sails overhead, then nosedives straight into a cowpat near the upper meadow. A stocking performs a sad, spiraling descent into the shallows, now decorated with algae and one confused tadpole. You freeze, then sprint, or ... hobble quickly. Your legs are half asleep, and your shoes are waterlogged, so it's more of a heroic shuffle. You rescue the chemise first, which now smells like agricultural tragedy. You sigh, wring it out again, and add it to the emergency rewash pile now, a growing tower of betrayal. A young boy watching from a nearby cart snorts and says, "Bet the cows like it better now." You respond with the most withering medieval stare you can muster, which only encourages him to moo at you. You ignore him and turn to the river again, trying not to lose more laundry to the skies. One stocking, though, is gonna vanish downstream like a textile ghost. You scan the water, searching for any glimpse of soggy wool. Nothing, just ripples, reeds, and the unsettling possibility that someone's goose might be wearing it by tomorrow. Historians still argue whether rivers were seen as sacred spaces of cleansing or just public utilities. For you, it's hard to believe anything sacred would eat your sock and spit it back out in someone's stew pot. You move to a new spot near a bend in the river, hoping for a little shelter from the wind. It's quieter here. You lay the garments one by one over the shallows, gently pressing them down, watching the current pull away the last clinging bits of ash, lie, and frustration. A toad watches you from a nearby rock. You consider asking for its advice. Then, the worst moment of the rinse, your toe. Something attaches to it. It is small, wet, slimy. You freeze. Look down. A leech. This isn't your first leech rodeo. You've heard the stories. Don't yank, don't burn, don't scream unless you want attention from the nearby stable boys. So you grit your teeth, reach for a stick, and gently dislodge the wriggling intruder. It falls into the river. Insulted, you consider naming it Gerald. You hope it floats into the tanner's workshop. Now, shaking slightly, you examine your foot. No real damage, just a red dot and a new phobia. You swish your foot through the water like a horse checking for crocodiles. You glance up the river, where another washer is balancing a linen shift on a rock to dry. It's a delicate act, a balancing game, a whisper away from collapse. Sure enough, a minute later, the rock shifts and the shift slips. It lands directly in a muddy hoofprint. She stares at it in silence for a long, long time. You offer her a sympathetic nod. No words are necessary. You both belong to the same order now. The Fellowship of the Fallen Linen. With your rinsing done for. Now you gather your clothes into a basket that's far too small for the job and begin the slow, painful process of hauling them to the drying area, a clearing dotted with flat rocks, bramble hooks, and low-hanging branches strung with earlier loads like medieval bunting. You drape the garments carefully, spacing them to let the air flow between the layers. The sun is stronger now, warming your back and giving your clothes their best chance at drying before mold claims them for its own. You press each piece against the stone for a final ring, then step back to admire your battlefield. The drying field is well, a mess. One shirt is half folded over a gooseberry bush. Another has slipped entirely and is currently wearing a dead leaf like a brooch. But it's your mess. And somehow, despite the wind, the slime, and the missing sock, it's starting to look like success. You plop onto a dry patch of grass, stretch your aching legs, and stare up at the sky. A cloud drifts lazily overhead in the shape of a chicken. Fitting. You close your eyes for just a moment, one eye open always. You've learned your lesson because, somewhere nearby, that dog from earlier is still lurking, and you've got drying to protect. Drying is supposed to be the easy part, the victory lap, the gentle stretch of sun-baked calm after hours of kneeling, scrubbing, and slapping linens senseless. But you, wise as you are now, know better, because in a medieval village, nothing is sacred, not even freshly washed underwear. You settle beside your awkward collection of garments, arranged in careful rows across rocks, hedges, and an old fence that creaks every time the wind shifts. The sky is clearer than before. Sunlight dapples through the tall grass, giving the illusion of peace. But drying is war. Your first adversary is time. You have maybe 2 hours, if that, before the weather turns. Animals wander too close, or someone from the village comes poking around in search of borrowable items. This is, after all, the meadow near the shrine of Saint Romualda, which means 2 things. The soil is rumored to be holy, and half the town walks through it on their way to pray. You lean back, letting your sore muscles melt into the grass. The scent of wet linen mingles with that of crushed mint and the faint trace of cow dung. Not unpleasant, all things considered. The wind shifts again, carrying with it the sounds of distant bells and the low murmurs of people approaching the shrine. You sit bolt upright. People are coming. This is bad. You know exactly What happens when well-meaning pilgrims pass your drying site? They don't mean to steal, it just happens. "Oh," they'll say, picking up your perfectly bleached chemise, "isn't this lovely?" Then poof, folded neatly into a prayer bundle and carried away under the arm of someone who believes Saint Romalda left it as a gift. You grab a stick and prop it near your most valuable pieces, anything with embroidery, lace, or family initials, and begin your silent vigil. You've become the guardian of drying garments, the patron saint of fragile socks. A group approaches 3 women and 1 elderly man, all draped in rough-spun wool and whispering about miracles. One of them glances at your drying line. You lock eyes. She smiles. You do not smile back. She moves on. You exhale. The relics of Saint Romalda are said to rest beneath a stone near the far end of the meadow. Pilgrims come to touch it, sometimes to nap beside it, and occasionally, distressingly, to lay their babies on it in hopes of curing colic. You once watched a child pee directly onto your cousin's drying apron during such a ritual. No one spoke of it again. Today, the holy stone is unoccupied, but the area is busy enough to make you nervous. You scoot closer to your linens and begin refolding anything that's too close to the path. The last thing you need is a blessed breeze carrying off your best shift and making it a holy relic as you work. Your eyes catch something strange on one of your garments, a stain that wasn't there before. A brownish-green blotch, roughly the size of a walnut, spreading across the back of your brother's best tunic. You sniff it. You regret sniffing it. Bird was here. You look up. No one in sight. But the air holds that smug silence only a well-fed sparrow could leave behind. You wipe the tunic with a scrap of moss, then sigh and toss it onto the emergency rewash pile. Again, that pile's getting big enough to deserve its own tax status. Then comes the next disaster. A sudden gust of wind blows your drying smock directly onto the shrine stone. This wouldn't be so bad if not for the devout woman kneeling beside it, eyes closed, hands raised, whispering fervent prayers. She opens her eyes just in time to be blessed by your flapping underwear, which lands squarely on her head like a divine slapstick joke. She gasps. You bolt. "I am so sorry," you say, grabbing the smock and backing away like a thief from an altar. She blinks, unsure whether to be horrified or honored. "I thought," she whispers, "I thought it was a sign." You nod slowly. "It was," you say, "a sign that I need stronger clothespins." She nods solemnly. You part ways. With quiet reverence and a quick curtsy, you add the smock to the needs a blessing reversal pile. You return to your corner of the field, exhausted, only to find one item missing entirely. Your uncle's nightshirt gone. You scan the meadow. No one nearby seems to be wearing it, though that wouldn't be the strangest thing you've seen today. Then your eye catches movement in the hedgerow, a flash of white. You tiptoe closer, careful not to scare it away. It's caught on a thorn bush, still clean, mostly. You reach for it, tanned, are promptly stabbed in 3 fingers by medieval botany's most vengeful shrub. You suck your hand, retrieve the shirt, and whisper something the local priest would call very colorful. You've now bled for laundry. As you return, your neighbor calls out from across the field. "Best not leave things here long," she warns. "The goats come through at dusk." Of course, goats, the final bosses of drying day. You scramble to gather your garments, rolling them carefully shaking off leaves, twigs, and the occasional beetle. The sun is sinking now, dipping toward the tree line, casting golden light across the meadow. It would be beautiful if you weren't so sure at least 3 of your linens have absorbed the spiritual essence of confused pilgrims and 1 passing squirrel. You load the basket again, this time heavier than before, somehow. The weight of clean clothes plus emotional damage. And as you begin the long, slow walk home, you glance back once, just to be sure. The shrine stone is quiet. Your drying patch is empty. But from a tree overhead, a single bird watches you go, waiting, plotting, possibly laughing. Home, you've finally made it. Well, home might be too generous a word for a Turum. Timber cottage that leans slightly to the left and smells perpetually of onions and damp wool. But still it's yours. And more importantly, it's where your laundry was supposed to end up. You push open the creaky door with your hip, laundry basket braced against your ribs like a battering ram of fabric. Immediately, your little brother comes skidding across the rush-covered floor. Is it clean? He asks, reaching grubby hands toward a freshly laundered tunic. You hiss like a cornered cat and bat his hands away. Don't you dare. You warn, you touch this, and I will wrap you in the tablecloth and tell the neighbors you're a new tapestry. He backs away, slowly, wisely. You set the basket down and survey your prize. Piles of slightly damp, mostly clean, definitely less awful than before clothing. The floor is covered in stalks of sweet flag, meant to freshen the air. You wonder if a double dose would mask the ghost of old cheese still lingering on your father's undershirt. Now comes the final ordeal, the sort hang. Drying indoors is a gamble. Outside, you faced geese, goats, and gusts of wind with malicious intent. Inside, it's the eternal enemy of every medieval home. Mildew. Your cottage, like most, breathes through its walls. Moisture seeps in and rarely leaves, settling into corners and under eaves like a quiet, moldy roommate. So, your drying options are limited. There's a rope strung from rafter to rafter, a wooden rack near the hearth, and of course, the chairs, which will all shortly be draped in steaming shifts that no one is allowed to sit on. You start with the most pressing items, your own chemise and apron, still damp but wearable. You shake them out, flap them like a flag of victory, then drape them carefully over the rope. You then place the family's Sunday best closer to the fire, adjusting the logs to coax more warmth. Flies upward. You lunge with a rag to snuff it out before it lands on your mother's linen veil. Because nothing says ruined week like explaining to her that her churchwear caught fire because of a rogue ember and poor spatial planning. Your younger sister offers to help, then immediately begins folding a pair of hose in half the wrong way. You gently nudge her toward sweeping instead. Then comes a question you dread. Where's my blue tunic? It's your uncle. You freeze. Because you know exactly where the blue tunic is, lying in a crumpled heap at the very bottom of the emergency rewash pile, stained with a mixture of soot, bird droppings, and what might be apricot jam, double quotes. Oh, it's drying flat. You lie smoothly. To protect the embroidery, he nods, impressed, as if he even has embroidery. You exhale, silently promising to clean it again before sunrise. You continue hanging the rest. Shirts with uneven hems, shifts with patches from 3 separate eras. One pair of hose that's no longer a pair, the left leg having mysteriously vanished during the rinsing phase, possibly claimed by a river spirit with a flair for asymmetry. And then, of course, comes the sorting dilemma. Hose rarely match. You hold up a blue leg and a slightly bluer leg. Same length, different decade. You squint close enough. You pair them and move on. Medieval fashion isn't about perfection. It's about survival with style. At this point, the house smells like damp smoke and soap fat. You crack the shutter slightly, inviting in a draft that's equal parts fresh air and cold regret. But it helps. You slump onto a stool and stretch your fingers. They're raw, slightly pruny. One knuckle is sporting a blister that looks like it might be applying for its own parish. And still, your work isn't done, because, in the corner, lurking like a shadow, is the mending basket. This beast contains every garment that returned from the river bearing battle scars, torn seams, loose buttons, stretched necklines, and holes that look suspiciously like bite marks. You lift the lid, threads and needles spill out like judgment. You lift the first piece of sleeve, ripped during the twist phase, and examine it with the same energy someone might use to inspect a battlefield. Injury. You'll sew it tomorrow, maybe if the goats don't eat it first. You grab a crust of bread from the shelf and gnaw silently, watching the drying clothes sway slightly in the fire's warmth. They look oddly peaceful, draped like ghosts on every available surface. If someone were to walk in now, they might think you're housing a small congregation of invisible monks. Outside, twilight falls. You can hear the sounds of distant clanging from the forge, a dog barking half-heartedly, and the unmistakable yell of someone discovering that a goose has gotten into their kitchen again. You smile a little, because, in spite of it all, you've made it. The wash is washed, the drying has mostly dried, the child has been warded off, and the house smells faintly, wonderfully clean. Well, cleaner. You rise and add another log to the hearth, watching the sparks dance upward again. One of them almost hits your brother's smock. You move it an inch and mutter something that might be a prayer or just a laundry-induced mantra. Then you glance around at your hanging gallery of damp fabrics. You whisper to them, "Don't mildew, please don't mildew." And just for a moment, you swear the smock nods back. It happens just as you're beginning to think you've won. There's a knock at the door, not a polite one either. A firm, insistent rap, the kind that suggests someone is either here to deliver bad news or collect a fine. You open the door slowly, cautiously, revealing a man wearing a hat that's trying too hard to look important. Behind him stand 2 more individuals, both in matching cloaks, both looking around your tiny home with expressions of mild disdain. "Laundry Guild," the man announces. Of course, because in medieval life, even washing clothes can get you in trouble if the wrong people think you're not paying your dues. You blink. "The what?" he sighs. "Laundry Guild of St. Bertilda, wardens of textile integrity, protectors of cloth, guardians of the ringer." You stare. Somewhere behind you, your dog-eared mending basket emits a shameful creak. "We have reports," he continues, flipping open a small, absurdly clean scroll, "that someone in this household has been conducting unauthorized laundering in public." Spaces, your mouth opens, then closes. You try not to laugh, but it comes out anyway, a soft snort, more tired than rebellious. I didn't realize soap was now contraband. One of the cloaked ones gasps. The man's eyes narrow. Were you or were you not seen washing unmarked linen near the shrine of Saint Romualda earlier this afternoon? You pause. You remember the petticoat landing on that poor woman's head like a divine parachute. You remember her whispering, "It's a sign. I may have rinsed something," you admit, near the edge, not on the shrine, definitely not in a holy font, if that's what this is about. The man raises a hand. Do you possess a washing license? A permitted paddle? Have you filed guild documents with your local Fuller's registry? You don't respond. He nods slowly. I see. The second guild member steps forward and begins inspecting your drying line with exaggerated care. He picks up your uncle's nightshirt and sniffs it. He recoils. This appears to have been beaten with an unapproved club, he says solemnly. You blink. It was a fence post. They all look scandalized. The third guild member produces a long stick with a little bronze badge nailed to it. He walks around your house, tapping suspicious items like he's inspecting for ghosts. When he gets to the smock, blessed by mistake earlier in the day, he raises an eyebrow. This one, he says, was dried too close to a relic. It may have absorbed sacred rites it is not permitted to carry. You look at the smock. At him, you very nearly ask if it's now legally a priest. Instead, you exhale. Do you want me to pay a fine? They pause, all three of them. The first one clears his throat. Well, fines are one way we resolve these matters. How much? 5 silver pennies. You blink again. That's 2 weeks' worth of bread or 1 chicken, or nearly enough to pay someone else to do your laundry so you can go lie in a ditch like a normal person. You sigh deeply. What if I don't have 5 silver pennies? The leader leans in. Then, by guild decree, you must appear before the master of suds at the town moot to explain your ... rogue activity. You stare at him. Or, he adds, you could pledge loyalty to the guild and pay dues in kind, fabric, soap, ash, 1 hour a week demonstrating the proper folding of hose. You fold your arms. Behind you, the fire crackles. I'll give you 2 cakes of pig fat soap, you say flatly, and a pair of mildly cursed hose that haven't had a matching mate since Pentecost. They consider it. The leader nods. Acceptable. You hand over the goods. He tucks the soap into a pouch and holds the hose at arm's length, as if they might bite. They very well might. May your linens be ever lintless, he intones, then turns and strides away into the dusk, his cloak flapping like he thinks it's cooler than it is. You shut the door. You lean against it. You exhale. The guild, of all the things historians still debate just how strictly medieval textile guilds controlled domestic laundry. Some think the rules were mostly for show. Others believe the fines and restrictions were real, designed to protect professional foolers, dyers, and laundresses from peasant interference. Either way, you now have a new badge of honor, outlaw washer turned provisional soap donor. Your little sister peeks out from behind a drying shirt. Were they the tax people? No. You say, worse. They're the laundry police. She shrugs. Do we still get dinner? You nod. You reach for the last of the cabbage stew, now lukewarm, and pour it into bowls. You eat in silence, surrounded by drying shifts, steaming socks, and 1 pair of hose, now mysteriously missing from the rope again. You don't bother looking for it. It's gone. spirited away by laundry karma, or perhaps Saint Romalda herself, finally claiming her textile sacrifice. Tomorrow you'll rest, maybe, if the mildew holds off. Morning. You wake to the soft sound of something dripping, not a leak, not the roof, not even the fire, which has long gone out. It's your laundry, still damp, because, of course, it is. You sit up slowly, joints crackling like old parchment. The air is thick and wet. The cottage, a humid cocoon of half-dried wool, steamed rushes, and regret. The drying rope above you sags slightly, weighed down by tunics that have aged 10 years overnight. You shuffle to your feet and walk the length of the drying area like a medieval clothing inspector. One shift, damp at the armpits. One chemise, suspiciously wetter than last night. One set of hose, dried, but now the wrong shape, entirely shorter in one leg, longer in the foot, and mysteriously twisted like it's been involved in a haunting. This is the curse of medieval laundering. You can go to war with dirt, fight a noble battle with ash and soap and prayer, but if the weather decides to turn, you lose every time, and it has turned. Outside, the sky hangs low and pale, not raining. Exactly, just thinking about it hard enough to sabotage your entire drying process. You sigh and reach for the smock closest to wearable. It's a little stiff. It crinkles when you fold it. But hey, fashion is temporary. Dry armpits are eternal. Your brother stumbles in from the other room, already tugging at one of your newly cleaned tunics with muddy hands. You freeze. He pauses, glances down at his fingers, then back up at you. No, you say, slowly. Absolutely not, he frowns. But I have to help with the hay. Then wear something already ruined, or nothing. I don't care. But if you touch this shift before the dew's even dried, I swear I will stuff you in the mending basket and list you as a tear in need of fixing. He backs away. Victory. Small, fleeting but yours. You return to your inspection, now noticing another delightful laundry surprise. Mildew. That tablecloth. Yes, that one. The ceremonial family heirloom used only on holy days now sports a delicate constellation of fuzzy gray dots. It smells faintly like betrayal and damp biscuits. You lift it toward the window, hoping for better light and some kind of miracle. None arrives. You press it between your palms and exhale. You'll have to You'll have to start over. And as you stare at the creeping fuzz, a dark, spiraling thought curls through your brain like a ribbon of dread. Why do we even bother? Historians still argue whether most medieval people actually kept their clothes clean, or whether a certain baseline of grime was simply the norm. Royalty had laundresses, monks had routines. But your average peasant, well, sometimes you wore it till it walked off by itself. You think of all the work hauling water, burning soap, fighting geese, debating guild enforcers, guarding laundry. From relic seekers, here you are, once again. With mildew, you sit, you stare, you think. Maybe filth was never the enemy. Maybe filth was just ... freedom, after all. No one expects anything from a filthy tunic. You don't get fined for washing it wrong. Birds don't target it. Shrines don't adopt it. It's invisible. Safe. You begin to consider this radical philosophy of intentional uncleanliness, a laundry strike, a rebellion of rags. You, the soiled savior of sanity. Then your mother appears in the doorway, holding a stained bonnet, and saying, "Can you just rinse this quickly before Mass?" And you know you can't stop. You will wash it, because for all the madness, the mess, the mold, there is still something satisfying about it. Something you can point to at the end of the day and say, "I did that. I fought entropy. I slapped filth with a stick and won, even if only for a day." You sigh, you take the bonnet, you walk to the hearth, lift the kettle, and find the water already cold. Of course, you put the kettle back, you start the fire again, stacking logs with hands still sore. From yesterday you whisper to yourself, "Just one more rinse." That's what you said yesterday and the day before that, and probably what you'll say forever. You turn to the stack of still damp garments and try, for a moment, to admire them. They are lumpy, misshapen, slightly green in patches, but they are yours, and tomorrow perhaps you'll find a better way, or at least a drier day. You've reached the final stretch, or at least the part of laundry day where the clean clothes are more or less dry. You've stopped caring about the finer differences between freshly laundered and not actively growing moss, and your arms are now operating purely on habit and fatigue. It's folding time. Folding, in the medieval sense, is an art form. Not because it's precise no one's matching corners or ironing sleeves, but because it requires strategy. You're working with odd sizes, unpredictable shrinkage, and cloth that behaves more like stubborn pastry dough than fabric. You start with the easy stuff, square linens, table covers, and tunics with identifiable fronts and backs. You smooth each one on the wooden table, careful not to let the damp spots touch anything absorbent. One fold, two, maybe a third if it's fancy. You stack them in the corner, building a small, slightly leaning tower of semi-triumph. Then come the socks. Well hose. 1 foot tube at a time. No pair matches exactly. One is narrower. One has a hole near the toe. One you haven't seen since last spring, and strongly suspect isn't yours at all. Still, you ball them together and hope the universe accepts your offering from the rafters. A single drip of water lands on your head. You ignore it, because today you are choosing peace, or something close to it. You're halfway through folding when your neighbor bursts in, looking like someone set fire to her laundry pile. She says breathlessly, "Have you seen the churchyard?" You frown. What now? There's laundry on the saints. You blink. What kind of laundry? She gestures wildly. Yours, mine, someone's. The wind must have taken it again. And now the statue of Saint Agatha has a pair of underthings on her face. You stare at her, and then perhaps from exhaustion, or divine inspiration, or sheer madness you laugh, a soft, wheezy laugh that bubbles out of your chest like a spilled pot. Because of course it happened. Of course some wayward breeze has anointed a holy statue with homespun undergarments. And honestly, after everything, after the soap, the mildew, the leeches, and the gildew, feel no shame. If anything, you feel proud. She stares at you, aghast. This is serious. You nod. You're right. We should go claim them before someone starts a new pilgrimage. You grab your cloak, wrap a drying chemise around your shoulders, like a shawl, and head toward the churchyard. Sure enough, the scene is every bit as dramatic as you imagined. Saint Agatha, stoic and weathered, has been adorned with a fluttering linen petticoat. Saint Cuthbert, not to be outdone, wears one of your cousin's shirts as a toga, and on the iron gate pinned by divine luck alone, hangs your missing stocking, its toe pointing accusingly at the sky. A small crowd has gathered. Some are praying. Some are whispering about signs and omens. One boy claims he saw the statue. Put the clothes on itself. You step forward. Reclaim your wayward laundry with all the dignity you can muster, and say nothing, because what could you possibly say? Back home, you rehang the damp offenders, humming a little tune as you work. The fire crackles again. Your mother returns from town, sees the chaos, and raises a single eyebrow. Wind, you explain. She nods. Typical. You pour a little water over the hearthstones to freshen the air. The steam rises, curling into the thatch above like a ghost taking a nap. And now, finally, you sit, not for a moment, not for just to rest your legs, but really sit, because laundry day, in all its sprawling, damp, absurd glory, is done for. Now there's something weirdly satisfying in it all. Something grounding. You'll do it again next week, maybe sooner, depending on how muddy your brother gets. But in this moment, this quiet, smoky, wool-scented moment, you rest. And despite it, all the guild, the goat droppings, the smock with a spiritual complex, you've survived. Your fingers may never recover, but your laundry, it's clean enough. The fire has burned low now, just glowing coals and soft ash, casting flickers of light against the low beams overhead. The cottage is quiet. Your breathing slows. Outside, the last light of day fades behind the tree line, and the air begins to cool. Clothes sway gently on their drying ropes, dancing in the warm updrafts like sleepy ghosts. One shift gives a soft sigh as it settles, releasing a final curl of steam into the room. You sip the last of your nettle tea, lukewarm and earthy, and close your eyes. All around you are the quiet spoils of victory: folded linens, warm socks, a shirt with only one new hole, and the fading scent of soap and wood smoke. You made it through another round of medieval madness. Another skirmish against filth, chaos, and mysteriously vanishing hose. Your arms ache, your legs buzz with exhaustion, but your mind, calm. Just for now. Let the world wait. Let the guild grumble. Let the rain, when it comes, fall somewhere else tonight. You are wrapped in the comfort of small winds of clean laundry, cooling hearthstones, and a room that smells a little less like feet. Breathe deep. Let the night take over, and rest easy, knowing that tomorrow's stains can wait just a little. While longer. End of script. Sweet dreams.